Hello, everybody, and welcome to ProblemSolvHer podcast. I'm your girl, Chloe, along with my girl,
Dagmar.
Daggy's in the house. Chloe's in the house. The humidity and heat is in the house. So, Daggy, obviously, we are a podcast where we promote women and men and share our experiences and our stories and have on people that go through trials and tribulations, solve problems. Some are health issues, some are personal. And I love when we are able to have open dialogue, and it's a really safe space for people to just share their stories. And I'm really excited about today's topic. But before we start, this is for all the dogs and cat moms out there. It is extreme heat in a lot of the country right now with extreme humidity. Be smart on how long you take your doggies out and how long the outdoor cats or indoor cats, vice versa, are out, and make sure everybody's hydrated. So, Dag, what are we doing today?
We talk about how to deal with disappointment.
I don't like the word disappointment in general.
I think for me, it's good to recognize when you have a reaction about something, right? And normally, like in general, it's disappointment, how it's described. But I think today's topic, I find it interesting over the years. I changed my approach, how I'm dealing with it. So I trust that who's listening to us perhaps gets another insight or another view of situations they're going through and how they can deal with it.
Absolutely. I decided took a long time, maybe 10 years ago, because I'm only 30 now. I decided about 10 years ago that I was going to maybe even a little bit longer, keep my expectations low. So, along with that comes less disappointment, I feel. So, if you're expecting something from someone, or you think you're going to count on somebody, or you're maybe thinking that you may get this new raise or this new position, or, someone thinks that their man is going to propose to them. I just was sharing this with a friend of mine recently who thought that on a vacation she was taking with her man that he was going to propose, and he didn't. And of course, along with that came a lot of disappointment on her end. So if you can keep your expectations in life, not low, right? Because we don't want to have like a low standard, but if you can if your expectations are too high in general, then along will come some disappointment. Do you agree?
Without any questions. Lately, how I'm feeling about it is absolutely like disappointment and expectations work hand in hand, right? We all live in our little bubble, in our little vision of the world, and things happen. I totally think this person is exactly like I am and would handle it and act and react in the same way as I am. And then I come into situations where the other person, their triggers and their personality and how they consciously or subconsciously deal with life is totally different. I had something with my friend's mama, I think 2 weeks ago, and would have been a totally little thing. Like something happens and I shared with her how I felt about the situation, and her reaction was like, it's not my problem. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. And I'm, wow, okay. So something what could be just, we talk about it and perhaps it takes few back and forth to talk about it, but you don't want to talk about it at all, how I feel. So it took me a few days to let it sit and not to react, not to act, just get to the point where, like Marcy says, we're in control of our energy. And what's my goal, right? My goal is not to have a fight with my friend's mom. My goal is not to have a discussion with my friend's mom. My goal is making the world a better place and doing something good every day. That's my goal. Does this fit into my goal? No. So that allowed me the freedom to let go. It happened. I was surprised about the reaction and it's behind me. It's not good or not bad. I don't hold it. It's nothing to forget or to forgive. It's just something for me to learn from.
Absolutely. That's interesting you brought that up. I was with my friend on a very, very long drive. You know, when you go away and you're in a car together for like 4 or 5 hours, there's so many things you discuss and bring up. And, you're not always going to see eye to eye. We're different in many ways, but we have similarities, obviously. You can't be friends with someone and have a good friendship without some kind of camaraderie. And we were talking about how we grew up differently in the sense that, and I've spoken about this so much on here. I grew up in a family where it talk, express your feelings, say how you feel, communicate. It's like I would go to sleep and I would hear my dad's voice, communicate, like, in my ear. And then I told you I would go to some friends' houses and we'd be sitting there eating and like no one's talking. And and she was saying how she grew up in a home that her parents were very chill, very easygoing, which is awesome, and there wasn't much, yelling or anything of that nature. But also, she said they didn't really communicate that great. So, and when you start to communicate and express your feelings, out of that can come disappointment, expectations, people maybe feeling like they hurt each other's feelings, but they had to say how they felt anyway. And then some people just don't want to have any conflict at all. So they just avoid discussions. They just don't want to. So maybe that's what your friend's mom is doing. Sometimes, and if my brother's listening, Dylan, I love you dearly. He wants to talk to me about the same subject over and over of things that he wants me to work on. And sometimes I just go, I'm good. I'll go in and the energy is really good. I'm like, I want to have a glass and want to relax. I just want to do this right now. And usually he's like, okay, well, I want to talk about it at some point. And I do like talking about things. Like you wanted to talk earlier. And it's not that I didn't want to, it's that at that moment, this guy, that was our, noon is around our time. And then I was like, yeah, well, I'm happy to before we get on here. And then we kind of discussed it on text and then I was fine. But if you still wanted to, I would have come on earlier. And I think if people have the right communication, then they'll always work through it. Everyone's not going to see eye to eye. People will have differences of opinions. We don't talk religion and politics on here, but I am having with some people in terms of their political views, which I can't have these conversations with these people. I find it hard to interact with them lately. And I step away because it's not only am I disappointed by them in their way of thinking and what I would call their moral compass, I'm just like, I'm good. The expectations at this point, when you're discussing the political arena today, because it's very heavy, I feel is just, I'm good. I don't want to be around it. I don't even want to discuss it. So this way, you're not even disappointed because you don't have to hear what the other person has to say. So being disappointed is a part of life, just like rejection is and expectations. But I can think of things over the years that I was extremely disappointed about, whether it was like friendships that just, ended up falling apart. And we all play a role, but things that maybe I was extremely hurt by and family members, boyfriends. But I have my best friend from college who was on one of our very first episodes, Janine, the blonde, who's amazing. I love you, JJ. When we were younger, we were a little wild, We've not like crazy getting arrested wild, but just partying and out and going to these amazing places and staying out late and just jumping on a plane and going somewhere. And we had so much fun. And she's a little bit older than me. When I was a freshman, she was a senior. She probably won't like me saying that, but it's the truth. We had a falling out for several years and we didn't speak. And everyone was like, what? 'Cause we were so close. And one night she had what we call liquid courage. She had a couple beers and she called me and it was amazing. And she's like, what are we doing? This is ridiculous. And I was like, you're right. You're totally right. And the movie with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg had just come out. I think it's called The Fighter, pretty sure.
Mhm.
And she wanted to see the movie in Midtown. We were living in the city and she said, let's meet. It's showing at Midtown at the big theater. And I said, all right, fine. And it happened to be Gay Pride Parade, which was amazing too, because after that we went and walked around the village. And I remember thinking to myself, you're a little nervous. You haven't seen this person in so long, even though you were so close with them. I said, oh, and we used to always do this together. We'd bring our own wine into the movie theater. A lot of these places, they'll serve beer and wine, but it's so expensive. So I said, she's going to bring wine. I just know, but she's going to forget cups. I'm going to bring two really cute plastic cups. So I hadn't seen her in several years. And she had bought the tickets and she said, just meet me, try to get good seats, go early. I already bought the tickets. And this was when you could still like leave a ticket for somebody at the ticket counter. And I went in, I was like, holding for her. And I said, leave hers. I'm going to come early. I'm going to go get the seats. And I got really good seats, like center. And I remember I heard her going, hello, like in her really funny voice. And I turned around and we just hugged and there was no disappointment. There was no resentment. And she looked at me and goes, oh my gosh, I brought a bottle of wine, but I forgot cups. I hadn't seen her in years. I just knew that was going to happen. And I pulled 2 cups out of my bag and she was like, we're back. And that was it. And ever since that day, we hadn't even had an argument. So sometimes disappointment is what you need to get through something, but it's just part of life, right?
Yeah. No, while you were talking, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was a cute one. While you were talking, I thought about a big topic is disappointment about yourself because of the pattern and the ideals you discovered in your childhood, right?
Absolutely.
What your parents thought who you should be, how you should be, what you should be, and when you should do what.
Absolutely. I have to say, because I come from a very competitive family, very athletic family, a lot of successes in my family in terms like all the men all have their own businesses, whether it was my dad, my brother, my cousins, and a lot of the women also. A few female cousins are very successful. They have their own businesses. I just remember that there was pressure really around sports mostly. It wasn't school and all these other extracurricular activities that kids are doing today. When I see my friends' kids that are like 12 and 14, the amount of pressure that's put on them, not necessarily even by the parents, but just by the school. And you have to play 2 sports, you have to play piano, you have to do karate, these kids don't even have time to like relax and hang out. They're constantly, and then what happens is it puts the pressure on the parents and then the parents put them on the children. So growing up, I mean, there were always expectations, and my parents always believed in me and my brother, which is great. I never really felt, though, like, oh my gosh, they're putting pressure on me to become a lawyer, to become a doctor, to go down this path. Tennis was so big in my family. And had I have had one of my parents, especially my dad, pushed me a little bit harder, I might have kind of tried to maybe pursue that in college and getting a scholarship and going far because I was so dedicated to it at one point. And then you hear about these parents with their children that end up becoming their coaches and they're like diehards and they push them hard, hard, hard. And then some of them are the biggest athletes today. And they say, my parents, specifically my dad, pushed me really hard and it drove me crazy when I was younger, but look where I am today. So no one wants to disappoint their parents. Parents don't want to be disappointed by their children, but how much pressure do you put on someone at a young age, which then shapes them from when they're older and their image of themselves?
Yeah. I think just from my assumption, I would think if it's your passion, it's much easier as if it's not your passion, but your parents want it for you because you're good in it.
I agree 100%. I think that there are also some people that I know from growing up that were like, wanted to play a sport and everyone in their family were doctors or attorneys, for example. And they're like, you're not going to be a professional athlete. And a couple that went on to get scholarships, a friend of mine who got a tennis scholarship and she did pretty well, went to Villanova. And then a guy friend of mine who was really big into basketball. And there was a guy when we were growing up that my brother was friends with. I wasn't really friends with him. His name is Wally Zerbiak. Anyone's watching and you're really in the NBA, gorgeous, like 6'9". He went to my brother's high school. His wife, they're like, the all-American looking couple. He played for the Timberwolves, which was a big team for a time. Then he went on to ESPN and he had a really good career in sports. And I don't know this, but from what my brother told me, he came from like a very athletic family and it was like he wanted to pursue it. And if you want to be in the NBA and you have really good height, that's a good start. And yeah, he had an incredible career doing it. So all parents are different. Some push in different directions. If you have a generation of families where My dad's a doctor, my mom's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor, my cousin, in certain cultures, especially. Actually, a lot. I watched this the other day. In Indian culture, the families follow kind of in a long line of succession of the whatever job that family member pursues, whether it's doctors or they're all attorneys or accountants. And I find that interesting. I mean, I don't know if that's the case in general, but disappointment it's not fun and we don't like it. But I think it helps us to grow.
Yeah, I think the key is to recognize it and then make the best out of it.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you can think of that really disappointed you that helped you say to yourself, okay, in the future, I won't allow this to disappoint me as much. I'm going to change the narrative. Because I think once we do that, we're less disappointed as we get older.
It was a behavior in my parents I saw that really disappointed me, and I did not have the power and control to change theirs. So I promised myself I would never do it.
Yeah. That's another thing that we look at our parents, they're our role models. And if what they're doing sometimes is not what we want and they say something, and I've said this to my parents before, but look how you're reacting in this situation. You're supposed to be my role model, right? And they're like, oh, you're right. Hold on. Hold on a second. And when you tell them that, it's almost like they don't recognize it until you say it. And when you get to a certain age, I feel like once you hit 40, you can then say to your parents, okay, I have experience now. You can't say to me, I know so much more than you. You're just a child. Once you get to a certain age and you've traveled the world a little bit and had a lot of relationships and jobs, and you can reflect and you're an introspective person, you can, if you do it in the right way, right? You can say to them, well, listen, hold on a minute. You're my role model, right? Look how you're reacting. So we're products of our environments as well, right?
Right. We are product of our environment, but it's not an excuse. Because I hear that too. A lot of times people say, I'm doing that since the last 30 years and this is how I am.
100%. And I will say that to my parents. Oh, well, when we were younger, I remember this happened, or you guys reacted a certain way. But I will then say, but we can't use excuses once we get to a certain age. We are shaped by, our younger years and our early childhood. But that doesn't mean that we can't change those things and that we're not robots. We have the capability on our own to change certain things and break the cycle of, the generational things that happen.
Yeah, the point is, who do you believe is in control of your life? Do you believe life happens to you or do you believe life happens for you? And if you believe you're in control of your life, then whatever happened, 20, 30 years ago happened. But that doesn't mean it still happens. And that doesn't mean you don't have another option to deal with it as the one you learned in your childhood.
I couldn't agree anymore. I think that people need to be less reactive and figure out a way to, especially as a grown adult, no one is in control of our emotions, our feelings, and the way that we act within ourselves. I can't sit here and say, Oliver drove me crazy, like he is right now, because he wants more treats, and then just pop off and be like in a bad mood for the rest of the day. And I can run into a neighbor and be like, don't talk to me. Oliver's pissing me off. We can't transfer that on, right? And I think that's another thing with disappointment is, you know, sometimes when you speak to people or if you're around the same people often, family, friends, significant other, and they're transferring anger onto you or things they're upset about where they're disappointed with what's happening in their job or within themselves, whether it's they gain weight, they're getting older and they can't accept it. Even with my perimenopause, I try really, really not to blow up on people and control my emotions because sometimes I can't control the hormones. It's like someone else is in my body and they're in there telling me what to say and what to do. And I have to keep my big mouth shut sometimes, which is great for me to work on. So I don't want to disappoint other people. And I feel bad when others are disappointed in me. And I try to talk through it with them and work through it. But it's only up to us. Our reactions, our actions, and the level of how we handle disappointment and managing expectations. I think that's I'm going to say that again, a really big part of it.
My takeaway from this topic is what you taught me. When there is a disappointment, the most important is to talk about it and then figure it out together.
Absolutely.
Because if that's the goal, to figure it out together, everything else doesn't have the power or the influence anymore, like upsetness, frustration, anger, sadness, right? Then the goal is, how can we make it work?
Absolutely. And also, if someone is feeling disappointed, making that person feel seen or saying, I love you, I care about you, I want to hear what you have to say. I can't talk to you right now, but I want to talk about it later. Or I can talk about it in this moment. And you know what? I'm not even going to respond. Just share how you're feeling and just tell me and let me take it in and let me marinate on it and let me think about it. It's all in our delivery and our communication. I'm not the best at it sometimes. Sometimes I'm great at it. And I think that, like you said, if it's really communicating is the key. And disappointment sucks. It does. No one wants it. It's not fun. My takeaway for disappointment would be manage your own expectations, give yourself more grace, and really nurture the relationships around you. So when someone else is feeling disappointment, you don't push them to the side and you hear them.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
Great. Guys, don't be disappointed. We hope that you love this episode and that you're the opposite of disappointed and that you love it. And please find us on TikTok, the Chutzpah Girl. You can find us on Instagram, ProblemSolvHer, solve our website and YouTube. And we're available on Apple and Spotify. We love you. We hear you. We see you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Just a quick note before we end. This conversation is for inspiration and empowerment only. It's not medical, mental health, or legal advice. We are not doctors, therapists, or lawyers. Just women sharing real stories and personal truth. Always seek professional guidance for your unique situation.